Yeah, that's great. There you go. Thank you, Brianna. That's Brianna helping you there. Millie, you're good to go. Have a good meeting.
Thank you very much. Okay, so good evening, everyone. My name is Millie Garcia Serrano, and I serve as a regional director for the Southeast Region Office of Mass DEP, which is the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, and I will be serving tonight as your meeting facilitator. Our Mass DEP office services 84 towns and cities from the suburbs of Boston to the Rhode Island border, along with Cape Cod and the islands. I especially want to thank everyone for taking the time to attend this in-person and virtual public meeting, which is designed to serve as an informational sharing session on the town of Scituate Stockbridge Road landfill. I also want to thank the town of Scituate for hosting this meeting and providing this venue so that residents can participate in the Stockbridge Road landfill assessment process, as well as also, I would like to thank elected officials, as well as all of the Scituate Concerned Citizens Group members for your interest and profound engagement, very important engagement. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide an informational session on the status of the town's Stockbridge Road landfill assessment. The town of Scituate has recently completed additional assessment work on the landfill, which was submitted to the Mass DEP on June 30 of this year. The report was provided to interested parties by Mass DEP and the town of Scituate. First, I'd like to start with introductions. We will be introducing the panelists, followed by opening remarks by the town of Scituate and the Scituate Concerned Citizens Group, followed by presentations by Mass DEP and the town of Scituate's consultant, which is Ty Bond. Once these presentations take place, we will be providing meeting time dedicated solely and exclusively to questions and comments from those in attendance. And because this is a hybrid meeting, we're going to start first with members of this room and then move on to the virtual attendees. But again, before we get started, let's start with those introductions. Mass DEP team, please.
Hi, I'm Mark Jakers. I'm the Solid Waste Section Chief for Mass DEP Southeast Regional Office.
John McLeod, Mass DEP. I work in the solid waste section.
Oh, sorry. Mike Scher, I work for Time Bond. We are the consultant for the town, and I'm here with David Murphy, who is Vice President.
Hi, my name is Seth Pickering. I'm the Deputy Regional Director for the Bureau of Air and Waste in the Southeast Regional Office of Mass DEP.
I'm Daniel Hannibal with the Office of General Counsel for Mass DEP.
Town of Scituate, if you'd be so kind, Jim, to introduce your team, and Ms. Karen Canfield, please, from the select board.
Be happy to. Thanks, Millie. For those who don't know me, I'm Karen Canfield. I am on the select board here in the town of Scituate. Tonight we have our town administrator, Jim Boudreau, head of our DPW team, Kevin Cafferty. Sean McCarthy is here as well from DEP. And I'd like to especially welcome representatives from Representative Carney's office and from Senator O'Connor's office who have joined us tonight. I think people will be coming in. We will have representatives from our water resources and our diversity and equity and inclusion committees will be in attendance. And there's lots of folks on there. I did want to indulge you, we're not going to take the 5 minutes because we have more important things to talk about. But in our community, when we have a public meeting, we have a statement that we always read at our select board, and we have asked all of our boards and communities to do the same. And I know it's similar to the mission of the DEP has a similar kind of statement, but with your permission, I'd like to just start the meeting with that. So the boards and committees of the town of Scituate are committed to providing an environment of respect during meetings. We ask all members to interact in a polite manner, even when there is disagreement. We value the participation of our community and want all participants, including marginalized and minoritized communities, to feel welcome and respected. We ask our committee members and all who participate to commit to these standards to support and respect our community. So thank you. Oh, and I meant to start with thank you so much to your department for being here, for being so responsive, so engaged with this issue and coming down here. I know it's a beautiful night, so I hope you can spend some time with us after the meeting, but we really appreciate your commitment to this and the incredible dedication you have to engage the public. It's really extraordinary. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's our pleasure. And thank you, Ms. Canfield. I would also like to see if perhaps Mr. Lou Rizzo from the Senator O'Connor's office would like to come up front and deliver a statement. And then I would love to have a representative, perhaps Mr. Craig Diaz, give an opening remark.
Okay, well, first off, my name is Lou Rizzo and I work for State Senator Patrick O'Connor's office. He apologizes for not being able to be here tonight. He's in session at the State House, he's been there all day, but he does want to extend his thanks to the DEP for being here, as well as the work the town is putting into this, issue. And our office is always available for any kind of help we can assist with on this matter. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And do we have a representative from Representative Kearney's office here tonight?
Yes, hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Katie Baxter. I'm Representative Kearney's legislative aide. Patrick had a previous commitment this evening, but it's been a very exciting collaboration with residents. You all took the time to invite legislators to tour the site. The department has really stayed engaged with our office to provide information, and we work in close collaboration with Senator O'Connor's office, and we're obviously supporting as well. So thank you to the town and to the department and to all the officials.
Thank you much. So I'm going to go over the meeting agenda, and then as you can see, we have potentially the open remarks, and I do feel as though it's very important, necessary to have Mr. Craig Diaz, would you like to be the representative for the town of Situate, mainly because this is a grassroots effort as far as I'm concerned. When information came to the forefront and we received a phone call from Mr. Diaz, he's mobilized so that we can have good, transparent dialogue. So I appreciate everybody, of course, taking the time to speak here tonight. So we go through the agenda really quickly. Mr. Diaz, I'll turn it over to you. And I believe that then we will be ready to get into the formal presentations.
Want to introduce us and we'll wait.
Yeah, of course. So we've covered the welcome introductions. I'm going to go through the meeting agenda, the dialogue agreement, and then we will be moving into the opening remarks. If the town wishes to speak a little bit more, if not, we'll clearly jump into the Situate Concerned Citizens Group representative. We definitely want to hear from them. We have a presentation with Mr. Mark Akers from the department. He serves as the section chief for the solid waste program. He's going to give us a brief history with regards to the landfill, what we know, when the actual landfill operations began. He'll give us that brief chronology, followed by a little bit of a cartoon representation of the landfill leachate generation process. What is leachate? We're going to be talking a little bit about that, and also our project progress to date. I think it's clearly important that since the moment that we received that phone call, it's going to be a transparent process to ensure that there is knowledge and understanding regarding all the various steps that get us into assessment and further developing any conceptual model for next steps. Then we will have a presentation from the town's project manager, Mr. Mike Scherer, summary of the landfill assessment report that was filed and is accessible and available, which brings us to the next step, which is how to view the actual assessment report, how to go about providing public comments. So we will be going over that information. And then finally, this is really where myself and the entire team, we're going to be putting our listening ears here to ensure that we collect all questions and comments, because we are going to be jump starting into a public comment process effective tonight, and it will extend for 21 days or October 27th, I believe.
Correct.
So we will be getting into all that information. And then finally, just wrapping up, thoughts, comments, questions, and where do we go from here? That's really the question. So, Mr. Diaz, would you like to join us? Come up here to the stage and say a few words, sir, please. If you wish to be the representative, if not.
Yeah, she's
Okay,
going to do it.
that sounds
Yeah.
good. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sophia Owen. I'm the senior attorney at Alternatives for Community and Environment. We're a community-based organization, and we do legal advocacy to support communities of color and low-income communities to address environmental racism and classism and create healthy and sustainable communities. And we're here tonight to provide support to Craig, Dias, Reverend Dias, and the other members of the Situate Concerned Citizens. So we just want to say thank you to the town, to the legislators, and to DEP for being here. And our goal really is to understand the process and then to help the Situate Concerned Citizens advocate for the best possible outcome. I know Craig may have some things he wants to say later, but we'll let him decide when that is.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you. If we could have the next slide, please. Okay, so I know that some of us have been on this journey since 2020 and maybe before, but for sure 2020 for me in any event signals the start of this partnership and relationship with regards to understanding environmental conditions and matters that need to be raised and assessed and further delineated as far as next steps. I do want to say that we started this journey and then COVID hit, and that was a significant setback with regards to creating that engagement. But notwithstanding that, thank goodness we had the technology to continue partnering via virtual. So this is the third meeting of a series of opportunities for engagement. And for individuals from the Concerned Citizens Group, as you all know, we had a very profound, exemplary member of our Mass DEP team, Ms. Michelle Waters-Ecanom, who was facilitating these meetings, the first and the second meeting, and unfortunately she passed in the middle of the process. I know that some may not have known her personally. I keep her very much close to my heart as a colleague and a friend, and I know that for sure, Ms. Waters-Ecanom always wished for the best engagement. So significantly big shoes to fill tonight, but I'm here standing proud and tall, thinking about all her work and hoping that I do justice to her work. She, I believe, created these dialogue agreements, which are basic, rudimentary sort of how we should be conducting meetings. And I know that we all live by that spirit. So I just wanted to go over, as in past community meetings, the facilitation of these dialogue agreements that Ms. Michelle Waters-Ecanom had crafted and we have used in the past. And the first one is basically our goal. Our goal is to have open dialogue communication so that we can all listen to each other and understand what is the need so we can meet that need. So I think that's the first thing. The second one, of course, turning off our cell phones, or at least putting them on silence so that we don't create some kind of disruption for individuals that are really concentrating and ensuring that there is full understanding of sometimes very complicated technical discussion that we need to further explain. Third, if you are, for our viewers, currently right now at home, watching and also hoping to participate, we do have a process for virtual participation. Kindly feel free to turn on your cameras. You don't have to, but if you want to, especially if you raise your virtual hand, turn on your camera. We want to see you. We want to learn from you. We want to hear you. Clearly, one person speaks at a time. Honor the timeframes and the process for this meeting. And again, given this meeting is conducted in Zoom webinar format, questions will be accepted from all the attendees. First, we will have legislators if they have questions, elected officials. Then we're going to go into the general public with some preference for the petitioner, the Situate Concerned Citizens, and then we will work the virtual room. So thank you so much for having DEP providing this opportunity for engagement. Thank you to the town. Thank you to Mr. Craig Diaz and the entire team. We really appreciate it, and I look forward to a satisfying, productive, and meeting with clarity and transparency. Thank you very much.
Billy, just real quick, right BMW X3, Grand ZP 68, your lights are on. Just hand it to me.
You're very helpful. Okay, so next I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Mark Bakers.
Hi, good evening. My name is Mark Dakers. I'm the Solid Waste Section Chief. And for those joining us for the first time, I'll provide a brief overview of the Stockbridge Road landfill history. And for those that are familiar with Stockbridge landfill history, I'll provide a quick refresher.
Mark?
Yep.
Can everybody hear in the back? Okay.
Okay, good, thank you. This aerial photo shows the location of the Stockbridge Road landfill in red. You can see the limits. The road and the entrance to the landfill is off Stockbridge Road. Between the landfill and Stockbridge Road, there are several residents. And then to the south, immediately to the south, there are additional residents. To the north, there are large wetland complex. To the west, there's a wetland complex, and then the commuter rail line. And to the southeast, a very large wetland complex. And in the bottom left of the corner there, to the south west, you have Old Oaken Bucket Pond, which is a public water supply that is located about a half a mile from the landfill. The landfill is owned by the town of Situate. It's approximately 10 acres in size, pretty much takes up the entire 10-acre parcel. Began operations in the 1930s, ceased accepting waste in 1976. Mass DEP approved closure plans in March 1977, and it was capped with 2 feet of soils, which was in accordance with the solid waste regulations in effect at the time. Those regulations at the time did not have requirements for environmental monitoring. They did not have requirements for mowing or removing the brush or maintaining the final cover system. One of the main concerns with unlined landfills is the generation of leachate and its effect on groundwater and surface water. I'm going to advance to the next slide and talk a little bit about leachate generation. I think it's kind of critical for understanding unlined landfills like this one. Leachate is generated primarily by rain percolating through the waste, comes down through the landfill, gets into the waste mass itself, picks up contaminants that are in the waste, and then flows out the bottom into the soils below, and that's when we call it leachate. And then it flows down to the water table, hits the aquifer, and then moves in the direction of groundwater flow. If there's a final cover system, here we have the final cover system on the top. The rain hits it and runs off to each side, and that reduces the amount of leachate that's generated. That's clean stormwater now goes into the soils and recharges the aquifer or the wetlands or the pond or anything is in. So the department has had regulations pretty much since 1971 that have had some kind of final cover system on landfills for this reason, or one of the main reasons. And additionally, I'm going to discuss just briefly, the town in 1987 to 1991 initiated some environmental assessments of the Stockbridge landfill with a focus on evaluating potential impacts to groundwater and surface water, because leachate is the known pathway. Their focus was really on making sure there were impacts to Oaken Bucket Pond were evaluated. They installed approximately 16 monitoring wells. Between, I think it's worth going back for a second, and sometimes standing up when people have the presentation. They installed a bunch of, all the focus of the assessment was right in here, where they installed monitoring points and took surface water locations to evaluate any potential effects on Oaken Bucket Pond. Let me move. All right, that brings us to, I'm going to let the town's consultant, they may discuss more about that later. Take you to 2020 to 2023, the landfill assessment work that has been done to date. In the fall of 2020, as a result of new development occurring in the area, public interest in the landfill and the landfill's proximity to the public water supply, which is still ongoing, Mass DEP revisited the Stockbridge Road landfill assessment information. We reviewed all our files. We looked at the previous landfill studies. We contacted the town, got information on private wells. We got information about a 40B development that was in progress to the north, which has now been built. We also looked at assessor's information, and we also looked at new aerial photos and other information that we had in our records. And we completed a site inspection in November of 2020. After completing this review, an analysis of the information, we concluded that The historical landfill groundwater data, which was basically from 87 to 91, is typical of the contaminants you would find in a landfill of this era. We determined there was no private wells in the immediate area. We did some follow-up work later on where the town and the consultant will look further. There are no private wells anywhere near the landfill. Closest one is 1,000 feet to the north, and that's upgraded in the opposite direction of groundwater flow. Routine drinking water test of the closest public water supply, which is Old Oaken Bucket Pond, showed no impacts from the landfill on drinking water quality. We did determine that, however, since there was no data from 87 to 91, that additional assessment of the environment, including groundwater, surface water, and soil gas, needed to be done to evaluate current conditions. The last modern record, as I said, was from 91, so there was a gap in there. It also included an evaluation of the existing final cover system, was warranted on a re-examination for the limits of disposal. Department looked at some of the aerial photos, went back. You could do things now with photos and GIS systems that you couldn't do back there, overlay the plans, and it looked like there might be waste off-site. And that was one of the big reasons why we reopened this. Additionally, Mass DEP concluded that based on all the existing information, there was nothing to suggest that it posed an immediate threat, but we needed more information and wanted to evaluate. At that point, Mass DEP instructed the town to submit a permit application to conduct additional assessment investigations. The town appropriated those funds in the fall of 2021 and then prepared a permit application and submitted it to Mass DEP in January 2022. The assessment work included groundwater, soil gas, test pits and soil borings, groundwater, surface water, and soil gas samples, and a site survey. Note it didn't have any soil sampling, and typically this is a task that's we do if we do soil sampling. It's after we've determined the extent of waste. There's no point testing the waste itself. If you're going to relocate waste, then we typically will do soil confirmatory testing to verify that the waste, the underlying soil, meets all current standards. Mass DEP reviewed the permit, issued a draft permit for public comment, then reviewed the public comments, and we issued a final decision in July of 2022. And that moved us to the implementation phase on the slide here. The town's consulting conducted assessment work in the summer of 2022 and the first half of 2023 and submitted the report on June 30th of 2023, which is the focus of tonight's meeting. I'm not going to go into detail in that scope of the assessment completed by the town, as the town's consultant, Ty and Bond, will speak to that tonight in more detailed information in their presentation regarding conclusions and recommendations. What I will do is kind of talk about, and I'm sorry for this not, I'm glad I think everyone online can see it, but it's not quite showing fully on this, but it's most of the slide here. As usual and customary, while Mass DEP is reviewing a permit or permit-related document, Mass DEP will listening to the comments and questions presented, but not able to answer questions directly related to the adequacy of that document during the meeting because we must maintain the integrity of the review process. What we will do is answer generic questions regarding landfill assessment and closure, and generic questions regarding permitting process, how to comment on the Stockbridge assessment report. As Millie mentioned before, starting tomorrow, we'll open a 21-day public comment period on the landfill assessment report. Mass DEP will talk briefly about that, what will come after the public comment closes on the landfill. So we will review the public comments, complete our review of the landfill assessment report, and then we'll determine if the work completed was adequate or not adequate to complete the assessment of the landfill. And memorialize this in a letter to the town. This letter is typically called like a pre-application permit letter. It gives the town instructions about what to do next. The town will then submit a permit to Mass DEP for review for that additional work. The public comments will be solicited, and then Mass DEP will issue a permit decision for the landfill assessment work. And you can kind of see there's a pattern of submit a permit, public comment, the department decision, move on to the next stage. And after the assessment is completed, the department has a process called corrective action alternative analysis. And that's a permit in which the landfill owner evaluates corrective action alternatives to address impacts to public health, safety, and the environment as identified through the landfill assessment. I would think it as the assessment portion of the investigation identifies the environmental problems, and the corrective action alternative analysis evaluates solutions to address those problems. I mean, after a solution to the problem is picked, an engineer will submit a corrective action design to us to implement, and that'll include detailed plans and drawings to implement that chosen action. The corrective action itself, corrective action alternative analysis, will evaluate several different options and compare them, looking at feasibility of implementation, protectiveness, ability to address risk and cost, and look at some of those in coming to a conclusion about what options are the best options. The town, after that, after one is submitted for DEP review and comment, they will submit a corrective action design permit application, which includes the engineering design, methods, and analysis. And I kind of, in the case when there's offsite waste, which we're talking here, it might include different methods to address the offsite waste. It could also include provisions for stormwater controls, confirmatory soil testing that I mentioned earlier to evaluate the soils beneath the waste, and maybe, dust control and other health and safety options. Mass DEP will complete its review, solicit public input on the corrective action, and then issue a final decision. One thing I did want to mention, just to put this process into perspective, is a common problem and solution that we see at unlined landfills is that offsite waste. That is a common problem, and I've talked kind of generically about what you do when you have waste that is beyond the property boundaries of the landfill owner and is either capped or uncapped. Typically, you would evaluate what options you could do in the corrective action alternative analysis. And some options that are typically evaluated include obtaining access from the property owners where the waste is. You could remove that waste off the property and place it within the existing landfill property and cap it with a final cover system. That's one option. Other options could be, you again have to obtain access from the property owner, you remove the waste, you dispose it elsewhere, for example, at another landfill. Another option would be you buy some of the land, a strip of the land, or you secure an easement for the land with the offsite waste, and you cap the waste with the final cover system meeting department requirements. Those are kind of the options to kind of put it into the process to go in. And that's the end of this introduction.
Thank you, Brian.
Stop sharing the mic.
Yes, next, we will hear from Mr. Michael Scherer, the project manager for Ty and Bond. He will be providing us with a summary of the landfill assessment report.
Great, thank you, everybody. Again, thank you for the introduction. Happy to be here. My name is Mike Scherer. I'm a senior environmental scientist at Ty and Bond. I've been there for about 15 years now. I'm here with Dave Murphy, who is a principal engineer and vice president of the firm. We work in separate offices, but we work closely together a lot on a lot of projects. Dave has a vast knowledge of landfills in the state, and we do a lot of work with all sorts of different landfills. So I think some of what I have to say is going to overlap a little bit from
Make sure that the camera captures you.
Oh.
So we want to make sure that the camera captures Mr. Scherer, if that's. So,
Go good?
The camera's in.
Oh.
great, thank you.
As I was saying, I think some of our presentation will overlap what Mark was just talking about, but sometimes it's good to mention things more than once. Just an overview as to what we'll talk about, a little bit about the process, which Mark went into pretty good detail there. I think the big takeaway from that is that there is a process that not only the town has to go through, the Ty and Bond has to go through. Mass DEP also has their own process, and there's a lot of back and forth between us. I'll go over a little bit of the site background, a little bit over the supplemental CSA work we did, and the findings, and then we can talk about the next steps. So to continue with what Mark was saying, the landfill operated as a burn dump and accepted MSW, which is municipal solid waste. From sometime in the 1930s, we think probably around 1935, up until 1976 when it was closed. The landfill itself was originally constructed over upland areas, and then over the years, it encroached into the wetland resource areas along the western side. And then you can see from these pictures here, the landfill was capped in 2 separate phases. In 1973, you can see that gray area, that area was capped. And then in 1976, when they were done filling in and using the central portion there, that in the 1973 plan, the entire landfill was capped.
What year was that?
1976. I was 3. Little bit on the site background. So there has been some intermittent monitoring that was done in the 70s and the 90s. I think Mark spoke to that a little bit. Most of that work was done by Donald E. Reed Consulting between a 3-year period, like 1988 to 1991. And they did some extensive geophysical work. They did a lot of groundwater sampling, landfill gas sampling, surface water. They found that according to the reports, there was a weak iron and manganese leachate plume between the landfill and Old Ogan Bucket Pond. And then one of their last reports, the 1991 report, stated that groundwater quality was improving and that it was approaching drinking water quality. So the work we did after we received our permit approval for the CSA, we did this work for the town of Situate. We did some waste delineation work, which consisted of 39 test pits and 4 geoprobe borings. Geoprobe borings are just a small drill rig that vibrates a core. It basically takes a core sample in the ground, and then you can pull that out and look at the soil that's there. We did groundwater monitor well installations, as well as sampling existing wells that are out there. And those are shown on the plan, which you probably can't really see very well. We do have some copies up here if anybody wants to look at those. And then we also had a professional license survey of the entire landfill property, so we could get an idea of where the waste was and where the property lines were. And we installed 4 new landfill gas wells and have been sampling those quarterly, or monitoring those quarterly, I should say. We also did a cap evaluation where we did a 75-foot grid across the entire landfill. And then at the center of each square, we did hand borings to various depths, which are on the screen there. I think up to 48 inches was about the deepest we dug. The environmental monitoring we've been doing semi-annually since we started. And we've submitted those reports to Mass DEP, and I'm sure they're publicly available. But they consisted of sampling the 3 down gradient monitoring well couplets, which were shallow and deep wells, 1 up gradient monitoring well, 4 landfill gas wells that we installed, and then 3 surface water samples that are between the landfill and Old Bucket Pond. So what did we figure out here? Basically what our CSA found was that the landfill portions, some of the waste extends onto 168A, 154 Stockbridge Road, and 21 Sandy Hill Road, which are those areas shown in red. So as Mark said, it was common back in the 70s for landfills to just sort of encroach on land that maybe it shouldn't have been on or wasn't known at the time. The landfill was capped in accordance with the 1971 regulations. That seems to be generally true as far as what we saw as the cap material, that 2-foot cap of clean soil. And based on our monitoring, we did not detect any landfill gas. Groundwater is slightly acidic. We detected cadmium, lead, iron, manganese, zinc, and 1,4-dioxane. And then for surface water, we also detected iron, lead, and zinc. There is a question as to whether or not sediment in the samples shows a bias for that. So on the next sampling round, we're going to field filter the samples so that we actually have a dissolved content. And then we'll also collect total metal samples so we can compare them. A little more on the findings there. We did find some tires and scrap metal and other debris on the landfill, whether that's from the landfill itself back from the 70s or if it's from illegal dumping, we can't really say. The streams and wetlands are regularly dry, and the standing water that we encountered was typically associated with storm water events. So when it rains, we typically see more water in the wetland areas, and then it would dry out. The total metals concentrations, as I was just saying, there was sediment present in the samples. So the samples that we collect this month, actually will be out there this month and we're monitoring, will be field filtered. And again, we'll take field filtered samples and non-filtered samples so we can compare. We did a baseline sort of qualitative risk assessment, which indicates that there is no significant risk to human health, public safety, or the environment at this point, based on the data that we have. Next steps. So we have submitted our supplemental CSA, as Mark talked about, and they are in the review process now, and we'll wait for their response. Some of the things that we're going to be doing in between that time is, again, the additional environmental monitoring in October with those metals surface samples collected for dissolved and total. I think we still, we have to complete the waste delineation activities along the landfill access road. I don't think we adequately have figured out the limits of that yet. And that will have to be presented in some sort of supplemental, submittal. And again, complete cap evaluation on the southeastern portion of that area of the access road, and repair areas of the cap damage by running or down trees. It is a very wooded area. It's very thick, and it's had 40+ years to grow over, so it's forested. And then repair any damaged landfill gas vents that exist. And then to continue our next steps, as Mark started to talk about, once the CSA is reviewed and approved, we'll have to do a corrective action alternatives evaluation for the landfill. And I think the biggest issue is we have to figure out, the town has to figure out, and we have to work with the town to figure out what to do about the waste that extends onto private property. I've just concluded on here very basically, kind of continue again what Mark was saying. The options on the table are anything you can think of. I mean, it's something that I think the town, the property owners and Mass DEP are all going to have to come together and consider. One of those could be no action. We don't do nothing. That's not necessarily a very good option, but it is an option. Relocate, as Mark said, solid waste on private property to the actual landfill and cap it there, or take it off-site to another landfill. We could extend the landfill limits and cap it in place, which would involve, working with the property owners to either develop an easement situation or purchasing a strip of land that includes that waste. And I don't think there isn't any option that's not on the table if it's adequate and meets Mass DEP's requirements. I don't see why it wouldn't be considered. And then once we get that CSA approval, we will prepare and submit the corrective action alternatives evaluation, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mike. before we have our next speaker, which I think, Mark, you're gonna go back, right? To
Yeah,
talk
talk
a little bit
about how
the
to
process.
comment, yeah.
I do want to point your attention for those that have a copy of this presentation, and for those that don't, I want to make sure that we provide you with the opportunity to, obtain the agenda in the packet. So we will mail that out to you or, email it out. I just wanted to say that Mike discussed our distinct roles and responsibilities. We have the town responsive to, given that they're the property owner, Mass DEP as the regulator, but most importantly, I just want to call attention to these yellow diamonds. And what that includes is incorporation of public comment. Some of these regulations may not have a mandated public comment per se, but again, the first thing that we do is when we have understanding that there is public interest, there is such a thing as enhanced outreach and ensuring that there is public comment. So every step of the way, we have folded in public comment opportunity. Tonight, when we get into the public comment process, I will be collecting those comments, at least sketching out the comments, and we will be, as Mark will be describing, encouraging you to provide us with your comments, written comments, so we can ensure that that perspective is folded into our thinking before we issue any type of permit or don't issue a permit. So I think we need to hear from you. So I just wanted to say it's really a three-legged stool, shall we say. It's the regulator, it's the owner responsive for the work, and then any potential abutters, as well as the public at large. So wanted to say that. Mark, if you could take it from here.
All right, so I'm going to talk about how you can view the landfill assessment report and how to comment. Before I provide you with some instructions on how to access the report, I wanted to ask those in attendance through a show of hands, how many of you already have a copy of that report? Okay, it looks like most. Who doesn't have a copy of that report that wants it? Okay, so the instructions here will be one way for you to get it, and you have it in the slides so you can take it home and don't have to write anything down I'm saying. Also, if you're having any problems or having any problems accessing it, you can always give me your email and I can send it as an attachment to you. We have, Mass DEP has this online portal that allows the public to search for all pending and final decisions on permits, certifications, license notifications that are submitted online. The June 30th report, the tie and bond is submitted, can be found here. Additionally, you can find the permit that approved all the work the town did at the same portal. So we decided to put it all together to make it easy. To access the portal, you can see there's the web page that's provided. In the page will show you 2 orange search buttons. You click on the search button. It's not the best site, but it's also not the worst. All right. What did I do? All right, that was not what I wanted to do. Sorry about that. I think it activated the webpage link and I gotta reshare. Sorry about that. Okay, try that again. All right, so we'll go to the next. Okay. Yep. All right. After you click on the orange tab, you're going to see where you can search boxes. In the site name, you're going to type Situate Stockbridge Landfill and then click on the orange button and that at the bottom of the page. Did it again. It wants me to go to the access page. Sorry about that. So you learn something new every time. And I will try to go jump to the next one before it decides it wants to connect me to the DEP's webpage.
Mark, if these are screenshots, maybe you can just go through them.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna, it's continuing to do it and I'm sorry.
You're not gonna click on that.
Yeah, Yeah, I could probably do it that way with the touch screen. See, and I thought I would get through with no problems. And I'm not sure how this worked with a touch screen here.
Mark, that will not advance. It's not a touchscreen in that.
It's not a
Coming
touch,
direct
that
from
won't,
left.
well, okay. All right.
Did Seth advance it for you? Remotely?
No, I'm sorry about that. I gotta stop and reshare. It's the only way I can do it. It's just not every time I click the link, it's accessing the webpage link anywhere I click on the thing. Hang on. Let's do it one more try, so I don't waste too much time here. Yeah, sorry. Let's just shut all of these. So I get one more try with this.
Mark, do you want to maybe just speak to
I'm sorry.
the actual paper presentation?
Yeah, so I'll talk to that, the
See,
people
what we
who
can do
have the
is-
copy.
Yeah, after this meeting, for those that are interested, we can sit down with you and kind of go through how to actually access this document and how to file comments. This is really important. It's an important part, and it's unfortunate that this is not cooperating today, but
Very
what
user friendly. I've
Yeah.
used it a few times.
you have, thank you, Lori, for this.
Have you found it user friendly?
I have.
Yeah.
Compared to like sometimes and it's actually, it's
Yep.
really easy to navigate.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that. The
We
people who
appreciate
designed it will be very happy. So you can follow the instructions, that'll get you the report. You can also see the permit application that was submitted, and you can see department's decision is there too, all in one place. And then how to comment on the report. Comments can be submitted to online to us, and there's an address in the PowerPoint presentation. I'll make sure it gets up before the end of the time so everyone has it. I will.
Mark, I apologize to interrupt. Stop sharing. Let me see if I can help you here.
Okay, stop sharing. And you can send it to my email address and I'll provide that. I'm trying to get to slide 12. Or you can mail it to Mass DEP's office in 20 Riverside Drive. There's the information that has about where to send it. The public comment period will start tomorrow and will end on Friday, October 27th. And that is it.
Is that your presentation, Mark?
That's the end.
Okay. Just gonna- I'm just gonna go. Thank you. Okay, and sorry about that, the slide show did not work for that part, but, we'll be here after the meeting, we would be happy to share, how to go about accessing the reports, how to, submit comments, and, what is most important at this stage in the game, and we have, again, an opportunity for public comments, is that we hear from you, we need your comments, so we can actually, fold those comments in and have a sense for, any additional amendments or changes or modifications, or maybe it's just not relevant because the regulation does not get to that issue. So I think we just need to understand your perspective and be able to work with your perspective. Again, as I stated prior, I want to remind everybody that starting tomorrow, Mass DEP will open up the Acela online portal, so you can actually provide your comments, and we do have a 21-day comment period on this particular report, and this period is going to end on Friday, October 27th. So, when you get an online portal, it could be possible that you file comments at 11:59 on the 27th. That's the beauty of online. So I just wanted to thank you, Lori, for your vote of confidence. I know other programs across DEP are now organizing themselves so we can actually have online availability for all the various 100 programs that Mass DEP regulates across the Commonwealth of Mass. For those that actually raise your hand wanting a copy, please let me know, give me your address so I can actually mail you the document if in fact you do not have the resources or capability in terms of technology and printers, et cetera. We would be happy to, provide that, give you your information. And of course, we also want to ensure that this work, your comments are vital for Mass DEP to determine if the work that the town in concert with its consultants, if this work actually meets the intent of the regulation. So again, I think we have a very important role as it pertains to the outcome of this particular effort. And it's not just the regulators or the town and its consultants, it's really the public at large and others, in this case, Citrus Concerned citizens that have requested additional enhanced outreach, and this is why we're here tonight. With that, I don't want to take more time in terms of instruction. I think now it's time for us to hear from you. We had devoted or dedicated, I think, approximately 65 minutes for comments, and we are at 6:50 right now, and we have till 8 o'clock. So I'm happy to entertain any comments. Michelle McLeod from our Office Solid Waste Program, she's going to be helping me at least facilitate the comments. Some comments, as Mark expressed, we, Mass DEP, will be able to talk about process. But again, understanding that we're sort of working under the confines of a public comment period, we cannot reveal one way or another some specifics because we need to better understand what's on your mind so we can fold it into this process. So I just beg for you a little bit of patience. If we don't have an answer or, we're in a silent mode when it has to do with something that's very specific because it would breach the integrity of the public comment process. I think.
Excuse me, Millie, can you just comment? Thank you for that.
Oh, I'm sorry, just quick, rules of engagement, right? We want to make sure that if you could kindly please identify yourself and your affiliation, that would be great. We're going to be taking comments and questions from the floor. And for individuals on the actual Zoom, our virtual friends, if they wish to comment, make sure that you raise your virtual hand. And I think I'm going to be relying on Seth to help me identify those virtual hands. But we will first give credence to you first, and then we will go into the virtual room. So with that, Ian, please.
My name is Ian Phillips. I work for Haley and Aldrich. I am doing pro bono work for the community. And I would just thank you for your presentations. I wanted to know, I understand the confidentiality, and it's clear to me what you're talking about. I would like a sense of whether the department is intending to provide responses, written or otherwise, to each of the comments that they receive.
We will provide a copy of the comments to the town and to the consultant. We will also review the comments. Some of them that are kind of general questions, we probably will respond to some of those. Sometimes we'll do that in a cover letter. I think last time in the permit, we actually made some changes to the permit based on the comments or clarifications. And then we sent emails back to the parties that commented with either a further explanation of things that we didn't do or that we just considered their comment. And we may do something along those lines. It kind of depends on the facility of the comments. In general, we usually, does it change our comments? Does it go into the letter that we're issuing and talk about those issues? But we usually do that kind of like in a separate cover letter or provide feedback to those who comment.
Thank you.
Sophia Owen with ACE, supporting Situate concerned citizens. I guess just following up on Ian's question, again, understanding the bounds of the responsibility of DEP as the authority that's issuing the permit. I think in terms of responding to the questions from the community and the reason why so many folks have been asking these questions for so long is that it has either been unclear or there have been different, there's been different information given depending on who gives it. And so taking us to the big picture, it hasn't been finalized yet, but the new environmental justice strategy for the whole of EEA actually goes, I believe, requires a response to the comments that are received. And I think particularly from folks in an environmental justice community in this situation, that even if it's not a standard by DEP, that it would be appropriate to have those specific responses if possible.
Yeah, whether it's an environmental justice community or not, I think it is our role and intention. And most importantly, just because it's the right thing to do to provide answers to questions. So we will ensure that those questions are answered. And I just want to state that unlike many programs of Mass DEP that are not permit driven, I just want to preview for everybody, the solid waste program is very much permit driven. Even collection of samples is a permit application. So it's very much very permit intense. Sometimes that seems like very onerous and elongates the timeline. So Ms. Owen, for sure, I want to make sure that we are responsive to your ask. Also explain, this is probably my favorite slide, albeit a little bit crowded, but it basically, for me at least, who needs to understand how one piece leads to another, this is basically the progression of the work. And as we noted, also coupled with this, which is more of an expansion of where we are in this fourth column, this basically tries to illustrate where we are in the process. It's a very long process, but again, steps along the way that need to be met in order to be compliant with the solid waste regulation in Massachusetts. So we will happily provide you with answers. I see Mr. Diaz and then someone in the back. So if you want to.
What we submitted all kind of questions. I don't remember or ever getting answers. That's been the biggest frustration about this whole process of when you're asking questions, you're not getting answers. That's one thing. When the debris is on your property and you don't know when it will be removed, it's very frustrating. I ask respectfully that the town lets us do a site visit because if the picture is being portrayed here today, is very little debris. Mark's been on the property, he's taken pictures of the tires. He told us he was gonna get back to us, tell us when the tires were put on the property. We haven't heard back when. Another thing we keep on hearing is illegal dumping. If someone could illegal dump way in the back where the wetlands is, and they could get back there, I would like someone to explain to us how they got back there. What happened is, in my opinion is, and I'm no scientist, but I worked for the T for 24 years, and I know how a lot of things work. It appears that there were bulldozers back there, and they brought the debris all the way to the wetlands, 5 feet from the wetlands. Mark's seen it. And they're not covered, they're not capped, they're not anything. There's a whole bunch of stuff back there. We're asking the town to commit to a site visit with the neighbors, especially the neighbors, the 5 neighbors that have been affected, but anybody wants to see the property, so we can say whether it's bad as we're saying it is, or it's not. I think it's really important for the town to make that commitment, and because we were told there was gonna be boundaries put up. Where are the boundaries? I know there's test pits on my property, 8 now, but before that, there were test pits on my property. We never even knew there were these test pits. Our children are playing in the backyard near these test pits. So another thing is, if I go on that property, we say if I want to bring someone from the media on the property, I don't know where the boundaries are at. Well, am I trespassing onto the town property because there's no boundaries? Whenever you do a project like this and you commit to boundaries, you should show us where the boundaries are at, and then we can say, okay, you're right, this is not as bad as you're saying, but I think it's worse than what you guys are expressing today. My understanding is from the 40B, with 21 Sandy Hill Circle, there's debris. That's a new development, 3 years old. I talked to some of the people that lived in that area. I thought it was a parcel. Well, they're telling me, and I don't know if this is true, but we need to find out because it's not in the report. The debris would be on their wastewater or their septic system, where that is, because that's not a piece of property. It's where the wastewater treatment or something is. So when the developer was doing this work, obviously they knew that the dump was there. We reached out to the developer. We reached out to the realtor. We told him what we thought was happening. No one ever got back to us. And whoever let the permits go through must have knew that the debris was there because it's in your report. Another thing is, I believe there's a 21E that abuts Stockbridge Road. And it's nowhere in the report. It's cleaned up, but why isn't it in the report?
That should be online. If it's all of our 21E, 310 CMR 40.
But it's not in the report. It abuts but there's so much to this. There's so much history. I think for transparency, we need to be out there on a site visit. We need to be with the town so the town can tell us, yes, this is your property. This is what we're gonna do, how we're gonna clean it up, what we're gonna do. I'm worried for my grandchildren and my children about the property. And so I think there should be a commitment. If we're being honest, and it's been capped, well, if you read the report, it says 3 inches, some areas were capped, then it says 4 feet. Well, I've walked the property with the consultants, and I can tell you one thing, I'm not a scientist, but it looks pretty bad out there. It doesn't look like it's capped in certain areas ever. And I don't know how, not just tires, Mark, you've seen beds, you've seen all kinds of different stuff on that property that it only could come from the dump. No one went back there and poured it back there. So let's get a commitment from the town to say we can do a site visit and we can be satisfied. Another thing is when the consultants were out there, the consultants were very nice. I would always ask questions. Well, what are you doing today? Well, we're doing this. Well, we're running out of money. We're at an impasse with the town because all the money's not there. I talked to the surveyors. The surveyors tell me their work got reduced because there wasn't enough money too. Is this true? And did the surveyors do a total assessment, or was it we ran out of money and we couldn't finish? Because the plan was great that you guys accepted, but was the plan reduced?
So in terms of money, our decisions are not based on fiduciary conditions. The sampling needs to be done in a way that's representative, which is why we're here today.
Well, Millie,
this landfill
the
assessment.
gentleman, it has nothing to do with money. When the consultant is telling me he's taking a vacation day off to get this done because the money's, they're running out of money and he had to get out there and he's going back and forth with the town. I'm just going by what he's telling me.
Understood.
And I'm going by what the surveyor gave me the piece of paper and showed me where the debris was on my property.
Okay.
Nobody gave me the information. There needs to be, people need to be more transparent and tell us the truth about what's going on. The people from Stockbridge and Landon should know the truth. If there's debris on their property, on their water filtration, they need to know.
Yep, I
So
do
that's
understand.
the key.
So I heard tonight that it appears that there are 3 areas that the landfill assessment is identifying, which is why, Mr. Diaz, it gets us into this public comment because the next step is identifying how we're gonna handle
But
the
the
waste.
report says 5 areas.
Okay,
So you're saying 3 today. This is what's
so
confusing.
I'm sorry,
I'm just saying, Millie, this is what's confusing. You get one message, one time you get another message. I'm in tune because it's my children that are gonna be affected. Our community is gonna be affected. It just seems like when it comes to Stockbridge Road, where there's neglect. If you look at Driftway, they did a great job with Driftway. There's been awards for Driftway, outstanding work from the EPA and so on and so forth. Why isn't Stockbridge Road treated as Driftway was treated? That's all we're asking for.
Yep. May I please clarify how many waste areas, if I could turn to the engineers? That would be helpful, so we can be on the same page.
Will someone make a commitment from the town, though, that we will get a site visit?
I'm not the town, I'm looking to Ms. Canfield, I'm looking to
If
the
there's nothing to
town.
hide.
Mass DP has committed to joining in, we're not the property owner, we cannot trespass. Every single work that Mass DP does, just hear me out for a minute, Craig. Whenever we expend public dollars and there's a need for access, we do access agreements. It's imperative, we cannot trespass.
But Millie,
We will have to
here's
join
what
you.
here's what I'm not trying to be ignorant, I'm just trying to tell you. You're saying we can't go on the property.
No, I'm saying that I
No,
don't
because
have,
I know, you
I
know,
don't
I
have
understand.
I don't own
But
the property.
the gentleman that worked for you was on the property with us.
He had consent and access when we all went out there.
No, this is before the access agreement. It was 2020, August 2021, before the access agreement. We were out there and we seen debris. I'll show you the records
So-
and,
So let us answer so we
okay,
can
I'm
be on the
sorry,
same. I know you're frustrated.
I'm
and
passionate
you know-
about this because.
I know you are, and you should be passionate. You are directly impacted. So I am here to say that this is an important moment for us to kind of go through all the questions and be laser jet accurate, because we need to be. So
So in August 2021, we were out there. You invited us to come out and take a look at what was on the neighbor's property. That was something we committed to in the June 2021 meeting, and we followed up in August. So we went on your property and one of the other neighbors' property, we looked at material there. We did not go on the landfill property. We went to the entrance to the landfill behind one of the residents and did not go onto the landfill property because that was not the purpose was, and we did see solid waste. We did see some tires. We saw metal debris. We saw, as you mentioned, a bed. There was a doll, I remember, a doll's head. I remember seeing that. I can remember it because I've seen the pictures. There is, on the north side of the landfill in the wetlands, there are tires and there are metal. And that, the department, the way we look at it, if waste is contiguous with a landfill, the assumption is that came from the landfill. That's where we start, and then we go from there. So the waste that is there illegal dumping on the landfill? Yes, there is some illegal dumping from people trespassing. There is hunting, there's people throwing their stuff, there's people throwing a bag of trash. So there's some recent illegal dumping also on the landfill. But is the tires and the metal that's around in the wetlands, especially on the north side, where, no one is going to drag tires down the access road by the residents through the gate, up and over, which I think is what you were getting at. The assumption is that's all there. And the assumption is that when waste is contiguous, that's what you do the test pits for. And people are going to say, well, it's a property line. Well, we didn't put it. When the waste goes across the property line, the assumption is it's from the landfill. That burden's on them to show otherwise.
And this
That's
is-
always the
And
department's
this is
position.
where we're now. This process is appropriation of funding to pull back that waste, or basically decide, is it a purchase? Is it a lease? Is it a pullback? That's where we need to understand the voices. This is where we are right now, which is why it's imperative that we weigh in and comment.
The piece.
I'm just, there's eight test pits or test wells on my property. How much more time is it gonna be there? How about on the other folks' property? How long is it gonna be? How long is the debris gonna be there? What kind of waste is it? It doesn't say in the report what kind of waste is on these,
Municipal solid
You know,
waste.
and
Municipal,
that's why
This is akin to driftwood, municipal solid waste, old dump from the 1930s. And this is exactly where we are now. We needed to do the surveying, we needed to understand, and we're ready to go. The town has gone out to appropriate funding. And now, Mr. Diaz, we need your help so we can have that needed access, so that work can actually commence. However, I think we talked about in landfills across the Commonwealth, and I will say across the nation, when you have that situation, there's the common three options: pull back the waste, purchase the property so it's capped and now no longer in your control, your custody control, or lease.
But really, if you're the town, you're not the town, and a person that's being affected and the other people in the community that's being affected want to see and want to identify what's out there so they can see with their own eyes, wouldn't you do the site visit immediately?
Well, Karen?
Yeah. So Jim, I'm sure will jump in if I misspeak, because he sat back there going. I just want to put a little context here. So we've just heard of all this, we've spent a year and a half, 2 years doing all this testing. You alerted us to your concerns, you alerted these guys. And we've heard tonight, and we've heard it in the reports and seen in the reports, that public health is not an issue right here. That the water's okay. We've been, and I do want to note that even though the testing for the site stopped in 1991, Sean will attest that every single day we're testing Old Oak and Bucket. And as far as I know, there's never been a concern that any problem with that water was sourced from this place. So just so people know that it's not like we're not testing the water, it gets tested every day. So there's no water contamination. There's no concern about gas. I mean, I know that was something you were worried about, but it does happen on some fills. There's no problem with the gas. What's the right
The
word?
methane.
Thank you. The bad stuff down there. And there are no other contaminants that have been identified other than a little bit of lead and manganese in some surface water, which apparently just evaporates or goes in the groundwater. So we don't have a health medical concern here from what the data tells us. What we have is encroachment onto private property at this site, and we have garbage that's not harmful, but nobody wants it on town. We don't want it on town property. We don't want it in the town forest. To me, that's an issue we can address. That's outside of the environmental concern. Do you want the site cleaned up? We'll talk about that. Really, the biggest thing here
Time is running out.
We're gonna get there in a minute. Reverend, we're gonna get there in a minute.
Time is running out.
There are whatever 3 or 5 encroachments that need to be addressed. Because you don't deserve to have town's garbage on your site. We don't know what the answer is going to be to that yet, but that's what the conversation. Did I summarize that?
Yeah, I think that we are ready to complete this landfill report process by way of receiving your comments. If they fit within where we need to go, which we know where we need to go, which is basically take care of this encroachment of waste. This is what I want to do. This is what I think I'm hearing Mr. Diaz, Craig speak to.
What I'm saying is though, the testing that you've done, is it adequate? Is it enough to, because we didn't test in the middle of the dump, we test the outside of the dump. There's so
Well,
much,
that's-
I'm not a scientist,
Understand.
but there's so much more that you hear from meeting with people that needs to be done.
Do you have that slide?
And I'm not sure
Put up
that,
the lead shape cartoon slide, and I gotta get back to you in a minute. So, I'm sorry, Ms. Owen?
Yeah, Ian, can I redirect it to you, maybe to ask some of the questions around the testing and just the
I know you have questions too. You've patiently waited.
No.
Do you have to leave? I'm sorry.
I mean, I think
I apologize. Before you leave, we have a few minutes if you wish to express the question. I know you've patiently waited.
Oh, I gave the questions to Laura.
I'll ask them on.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll
Thank you for your
give
patience
ones
and
from
coming out here
Okay.
tonight.
Thanks, Nikki.
Okay, Sophia or Ian? Are there questions to be had? Otherwise, we're
Well,
gonna
I
move
think
to
there are
Reverend
just
Diaz.
general comments that are being reflected here in terms of understanding the history. Because when we look at a burn dump that's burning things, that produces other chemicals. Those are not chemicals that we necessarily are looking for today. The solid waste program has focused on very standard parameters, and I'm not saying they're wrong, I'm just saying that they are. There are other parameters that very often are in play when you start looking at a burn dump. And
So you
that's
need
one of the
to,
comments that
yeah,
needs
so
to
I
be-
think you need to include those comments, but we just talked about how, I'm listening to the Driftway closure, right? We're using the same list that's produced and available, and you can look it up, as you know, you're familiar with solid waste regulations. It's the list that's contained within the regulation. So again, equal treatment for equal landfills, right? So, and now we know that there are emerging contaminants. It is possible that we could go in a different direction, but I think we need to hear specifics, because I think, we can think about the many thousands of chemicals that exist in the environment. I think that's an impossible feat if we want to get to some real action, which the department is anxious to move forward with. So your comments welcome. I appreciate that. Ms. Bowe.
Hi, I'm Laurie Wall, 17 Bay Road, Situate Concerned Citizens. My question is more for the town, and more for, so we did a town meeting, we did the original allocation of funds for this work to be done. And I know it's coming up on the ballot. I will be there supporting, of course, on the warrant, I'll be there, of course, supporting this. But have those funds been exhausted for the original, all the work?
The original.
90,000, is that what you said?
Yes.
We exceeded our appropriation on the original one by over $70,000.
Okay,
We never stopped the work,
right,
we never slowed it down.
okay,
So the money we're getting at town meetings continue going forward. I gotta pay for this meeting.
right,
Whatever happens in the future, then to finish this report, so
okay.
we picked the number 250,000, that'll get us, keep going, and hopefully in time for the spring town meeting, we'll know, this is what we have to do to finish this,
Okay.
this is what it's gonna cost when we get the money.
Okay, so the 250,000 we're talking about for the 16th is more just
It's
to continue
keep going, just to
this
keep
whole
going.
process. So I
Correct.
think that might
Yeah.
alleviate some of Craig's concerns that he's hearing from vendors that, oh, they were told they had not enough money to finish, that sort of thing. It didn't really make sense, especially since we're going back and asking people for more money, so.
And
Thank you.
also, a lot of times, and I know, I'm not a solid waste engineer, I'm not an engineer, but I've worked in the other various programs, and things out in the field, once you start digging and finding, it becomes apparent that maybe there's a need to address some additional areas that are found and co-located. As surveying was great, that gives us an idea to start moving forward. And I'm sure that there's clear understanding from the town that the work has to be completed in a way that's satisfactory. So that's gonna be one of our comments in terms of, akin to generically every single landfill that is in this process right now of securing a permit. We need to ensure that that waste pullback or the actual configuration, there's a lot to be learned once you start digging and finding. So I just wanted to give you that. Ms. Owen?
Thank you. I guess two questions. One is just, I know that there were additional next steps that were shared by the consultants and from the perspective of the town, there's more to be done. I think a question that the concerned citizens have is the amount of testing that has been done to this point, and whether based on that, it is possible actually to conclude that there is not a risk to the environment or to human health. And so I think hearing more specifics about what the consultants do plan to do, and or if there is not a plan to go beyond the scope of what is in the current assessment. The fact that there's the qualitative risk assessment that is referenced in the report doesn't have any supporting information is a concern for the community.
Okay, so comment taken. It's not my report, but we're reviewing and collecting comments. I do want to say that, and I'll get to you next, Reverend Diaz, I'm so happy to see you. As you see here, July 2022, June 2023, we just basically concluded that round for the assessment implementation phase. Mark described that soil as per regulation and how we typically deal across the Commonwealth with these kinds of environmental monitoring. The soil sampling component comes in when the waste is being pulled. That's when the soil sampling happens. So therefore, that's not being negated. That's something that Mass DEP will also be looking for. So I appreciate your question, very thorough, and we will be responsive to ensure that that particular exercise is executed during the pullback of the waste. So I just wanted to complete that. And if you have any additional comments, I think we want to hear from you. That's
Sure,
the most
just
important.
one last request, as I know Craig has repeatedly asked for the site visit, and that is a request that was made of the town. And if some of the specific questions that the community have raised tonight to the town cannot be answered in this meeting tonight, that there be an additional meeting where those questions can actually be answered, would be incredibly helpful to just assure folks that, that the process as it exists is going to adequately protect their health.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Excuse me, Millie, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
I have to take off. I
Thank you so much for
apologize. I feel
coming.
very bad looking at, leave
I
early.
appreciate your presence.
Again, Senator O'Connor, we're here. If there's anything else, and Katie will get a hold of me if there's anything else that goes on tonight that you need me for. So
I appreciate
again,
it.
I thank you, everybody.
Thank you very
Have a great
much.
night, okay?
Thank you for making time. I'd like to, I'm gonna get to you in a minute. Reverend Dias, thank you so much for waiting, and you had some comments or reactions, and I know I have a gentleman here that also wants to speak.
I don't have any reactions. I come because I've been studying this thing for about 2.5 years now. And there's a lot of things that's not answered, basic things that I'm concerned about. As my brother Craig, I'm an older brother. And we, the last time we talked on our field, this is greater than the 21E. I was wondering, what do you call it a 21E? You get the biggest bang for the buck or something? It was greater. And so when you talk about having a site assessment, and the site I don't think is adequate. I don't think testing was adequate, the amount of it, anything else. And I was wondering, did you do a hazardous waste assessment on this property, the whole property? Because they have some basic, the physical structure of it. It's not even some people say, oh, we go by the assessor's map, 10 acres. Community thinks it's 30 acres of land. So I'm looking at the physical survey of the hazardous waste dump in this, and I'm wondering about, the layout of it and the boundaries of it. Never been answered from the community perspective. That's one thing. And I was wondering about, how about the liquid, breakout of solid discolorization, odor on the filling of regarding the land. And then you talked about this young man gave a presentation and says there's some debris on it. And I was saying, if you did a testing, can you tell us, the burial objects that's in this waste? And we think there's pipes, drums, tanks, solid waste, small generators, solid waste, and hazardous waste up in this area. And I was wondering, has we ever done any testing for the groundwater samples and contaminations for PCBs and also TSCA material under the Toxic Substance Control Act? Then I had a question for site history. And I would like somebody, maybe the town can help me out on the site history. Who was the past and present owner of the site? Who was the past and present owner of the site?
For sure, the current owner is the town.
Okay, who was the past? Because we're talking about 1935 all the way to, they say the closing, 1976, thereabout. Can the town tell us who was the past owner?
I can't tell you.
Okay, and we know that the town's owner of it now. But wasn't it a gas company? According to our documents, what we read is a gas company, it could be Boston Gas Company, another gas company that used to own it, then the town bought it back for $1 according to the deed, right? So my question, when the site history of it, who was the past and present? Hey, so if it was a gas company, which I know is true, that's industrial, commercial, and they waste disposal activities, and they storage disposal hazardous waste on that property. And I'm wondering, have we ever tested that area? Out of all the area, if it's only 10 acres according to the assessors, or 30 acres, which we believe in a community, we think is limited testing. We don't think you even came and touched that area whatsoever. And we're concerned about that. So this is only a couple more things. Site history is very important to us. Then I would ask a simple question, the permit history. When was the first permit done with DEP or anybody over the town came on this property? Was it 1971, 72? When was the first history of a permit? Or secondly, I would ask, how about where the permit history, the enforcement history on the site? Has there ever been enforcement history on the site? On this property? You talked about if the property is unlined, you say it's capped. I don't believe that to be true. You know what I mean? They say this guy, Donald, with all due respect, Donald wrote this report, that report, we got missing reports and everything else. There's no proof, no substance, no absolute into this thing. Lastly, if you don't mind, I'm very concerned about the permits for this. And this is what I'm really concerned about. Now, a young man said, definitely there's no public health, no public safety to the environment, to the human beings, and to the animals. I read many of the documents, I don't see that proven anywhere. And I don't see how you can stand up and say that publicly without any documents, without saying that completely. Lastly, if we want to know in your testing, in your limited testing, I think is derelict, the duties of it all, is that no one told us about the potential threat that's still arising here, of the human threat. No one, are you telling me, it's not personal, it's just professional. Are you telling me there's no potential threat of any PCBs, any dioxin, any hazardous waste, liquid waste in all of that 30 acres of land? Are you telling me there's no public health, no public safety for the environment and for the human consumption? I see no report in that. That's my concern. And that's why we had to file a Title VI. Title VI is a 1964 Title VI civil rights claim with Washington, D.C., with DEP, because they're sub-recipients of federal money. And we're saying that they have not did their due diligence. We're saying they don't give the activities, the benefits, and all the structure of it. So now we have a pending case that October 30th will start mediation and facilitation. But they accepted it because it's not frivolous in my aspect. They accepted on racism, intentional racism, disparate treatment. Hey, then it goes into retaliation. I would include one more. Time. How long? 45 years? 50 years? Driftway. Driftway is in a white community, all white community. And then they said it was the EJ community, and they got EJ funding for that. But now we come and we respectfully request, we don't even know the physical boundaries of it. We don't know the history. Why are you not testing the gas companies and places like that? This is elementary now. My concern is to find a recommendation, that you're almost trying to find a recommendation. And I said, okay, but if you go, okay, you submit it. Mark submits it. What happens then? Can we appeal it? Can we appeal it? Can we get 10 signatures? Can we get $100 to appeal this situation? I only come passionately and respectfully because I don't think you have Mark or any of these consultants, with all due respect how great professional you are, I respect your trade. You have not addressed the public health, public safety, for the environment, or for human beings, or even the animals. There's not enough testing in this community, and you're leaving out. Now, I read a report says, oh, we only go by outside of the water because of the flows that flows to the brim. You don't even know what the brim is. You don't even know what the boundaries is. I don't believe that. I believe we should go in front. I question if it was ever capped. I question that Don Donald's report, because when we read it, it's very ambiguous, it's not reputable, and we're concerned. And that's why we had to put a Title VI claim in Washington, D.C., where they thought it was not frivolous, because it took a lot to get accepted on the basis of racism, because disparate treatment. What you did at Driftway, and what you don't do in Stockbridge Road is a disparate treatment, man. It's clear, it's blatant, it's racism to the highest degree. And so this is my concern. And just to conclude, because I said, I want to know what the physical structure is. I would like to know the history of the site, the past owners, and also the previous owners. And why aren't you testing the whole thing? And how can you stand up with a limited testing and say it's not for public safety, public health of the community and the children? We don't believe it's safe. And that's why we're here. That's why we had to follow Title VI. That's why we're here. We don't believe it's safe. And we believe in, if it's the town's responsibility, they're sub-recipients too. And I did not file a Title VI on the town as sub-recipients, where we could have. Because I thought it was more appropriate to give a town an opportunity to show their good faith and the benefits, activities, and structure. So I thank you.
Sir? If you don't mind.
My name
identifying
is
yourself.
Curtis Barker. I live on Jenkins Place down in Greenbush. Now, I happen to speak to Mr. Diaz. He has family that lives on my street. Now, Jenkins Place is in the town called Greenbush. My street is right down by that new brewery, the Untold Brewery. Now, it's a dead-end street. At the end of my street is a cul-de-sac. From the end of the cul-de-sac at 12 o'clock, it goes deep into the woods, which go into the conservation area, which on the town conservation maps is known as the Hicks Swamp. Okay, the Hicks Swamp is directly beside the railroad tracks. On the other side of the railroad tracks is Stockbridge Road and the old landfill. Okay, now, coming from the Hicks Swamp, there are two intermittent streams, the Tan Brook and the Clap Brook. The Clap Brook is my back property line that goes into the town reservoir. So you can see how important the Hicks Swamp is. The Hicks Swamp is probably a quarter of a mile from the old landfill. Now, I've been in town since 1992. History is one of my hobbies. The town of Situate, back then, every year ran a class at the Old Gate School on the history of Situate. It was two of the Gate School teachers that ran the class. One was David Ball. He has been for years until recently the president of the Historical Society. Now, there was a set course that he would teach, but also a lot of it was comments from people in town on the history of town. Now, one of the stories that was told, so this would have been, say, in 1993, 30 years ago. The story was, in town, one of our notable residents was Patrick Sonny McDonough. He was the senior member of the Governor's Council from 1947 until 1980 when he died. In October 14th of 1973, there was the second Chelsea fire. It had 14 acres, 14 city blocks burned to the ground. It was mostly commercial and industrial. So the story that was related by either the instructor or some of the people in class, an old story that everybody in town knew, that Patrick Sonny McDonough from the council, the governor's council, made arrangements to take all the refuse from the Chelsea second Great Fire and dumped it in the old landfill on Stockbridge Road. People today wouldn't know that because 1973 was 50 years ago. Nobody in town would know that story. But when I heard it, it was 30 years ago, 20 years after the event. So many people would have known that story. They said that there were dump trucks running all night long, dumping refuse from the commercial industrial area in the, pardon me, but Situate dump. I know it's not politically correct today, is a landfill. Okay, but that's my concern, because at the time, as I remember that they said that a lot of the refuse had either manganese or magnesium or something like that in it. Now, that was all. Then the next thing that the story said that shortly after that, they had to close down the old landfill because of all the pollutants that were there from the Chelsea fire. Now, from the old dump to the Hicks Swamp is probably a quarter of a mile. In the middle of the Hicks Swamp is a 10 by 10 concrete block building that was part of the pumping station. It was called the Clap Pumping Station for the town water supply. Last year during the drought, I contacted the new leader, the new head of the water department, to make him aware of that, that well that they could possibly put back online. And he did a little research, got back to me, said, no, we've done testing on that well, and there's a high level of, I think he said, manganese in the water that they can't take out in order to put into the town water supply. So my concern is a good conscience. I had to come and tell that story because today, politically, they could do anything. Politicians could do anything 50 years ago. Today, if that happened, that would be declared a Superfund site. Federal government would come in, do investigations, arrest people, put people in jail. But the good thing that could happen, if it were declared to be a Superfund site, the federal government would provide millions of dollars to clean it up. So I don't want to go throwing a fly in the ointment for you folks. You obviously spent a lot of time, money, and research, done a lovely job in preparing all of this. But I think that's an important thing that people should be aware of. That old dump could have every possible hazardous waste in it that is affecting everybody in town, because from the Hicks Swamp, the Tan Brook and the Flat Brook run right into the town water supply. The brook behind my house, my back property line, only runs during springs with a lot of rain, right? It's called an intermittent stream.
Yep.
Now I've got a map here that was, came out from the, okay, it was a group that was called the, let's see now. Sorry. It was an organization that was doing research for the, it was called the First Herring Brook Watershed. It's a town thing that was done probably 20 years ago about improving the First Herring Brook and the water quality. It's also part of the North and South River Watershed Association. So my concern is there could be all kinds of pollutants in there that you folks aren't even aware of, from those dump trucks running all night long because Patrick Sonny McDonough snuck those trucks in there overnight without letting anybody know. Anybody that would have been around then, they're all gone, they're all dead, so nobody in town knows that story. But I had to relate it.
Yeah, Mr. Parker, thank you very much for that information. I think history cannot be ignored. And as far as the question of impacted health impacts, I can definitely tell you that throughout my years of training, the important question that myself as a regulator and with some knowledge in public health, although I don't work for the Department of Public Health, I work for DEP. I live by the question of if there's an exposure, there's risk, and conversely, if there's no exposure, there's no risk. The first thing that we look for is, for example, private wells. That's a very important point with regards to any kind of private well survey. That private wells sample and there's an exposure point, that's going to be abated, eliminated, or at least evaluated. For communities that are served by municipal water, as Ms. Canfield explained, there's a very robust sampling program. It's not even a DEP Imagine program. Mass DEP is currently delegated by the US federal government, US EPA, to run the program that governs the Safe Drinking Water Act. So what are the things that we worry about? Primary exposure points, drinking water. If I'm drinking water that's monitored, as Ms. Campfield explained, and I stand by that because I do look at this data on a daily basis for 84 cities and towns, multiply that by hundreds of public water supply operators out there, public water supply purveyors of water. This is very watched when it comes to municipal water supply. So I think I'm more concerned about private wells if there is a potential impact, and that's where we work with the boards of health, because the boards of health have the primary jurisdiction when it comes to private wells. I'm not discounting anything that you're saying, Mr. Parker. What I'm trying to show is that we worry about potential drinking water. That's one of the primary pathways for any kind of exposure that could hurt me as a human being, drinking water that's not pure and fit for human consumption. And I want to rest assure the citizens of Scituate that that is the first thing that we look for: compliance with the federal US EPA Safe Drinking Water Act, a program that's delegated to our office. The other thing that I just wanted to note is, as it pertains to understanding potential exposures, it's a very complicated question. And in the process of defining what went into a landfill, it is a landfill. So what we need to ensure is that around the perimeter, if there's knowledge that there's contamination that's emanating from the landfill, that's what we want to attack. We want to ensure that that is well defined. We're here to solicit comments. We want to get your comments. And I guess, you know, in closing, I really appreciate that history, because without understanding the history, there's no way that we can guide more substantial sampling and analysis. So I appreciate the story. We've taken notes, and I don't discount the knowledge that you're bringing today, but I just want to underscore, and it's very dangerous when we feel as though every single thing that is, you know, to have a municipal water supply that is compliant with the Safe Drinking Water Act, it's imperative that we at least walk out of this door.
No, we got a couple
today.
questions. This gentleman in the back.
And Ms. Garcia Serrano, we do have a virtual hand raised, just so
Oh,
we're.
thank you. I appreciate that. So let's take your question. Thank you.
I'll make it quick. Listen, we were talking about the land transparency and stuff like that. By the way, my name is Sean Dias. I'm Craig's brother. I also lived in Scituate for 20 years. So I know the history of this property, you know, and I've watched it many times with my brother. I did read the report, and I saw in the report that there was high levels of, critical levels of iron and also lead. But I'm listening to you downplay it like it's not important, unless you're living.
No, it's important.
Okay, well, when does the boots on the ground to clean up all this mess, when does that start happening? I see this took 3 years to get us to this point, Is it another 3 years before we clean the mess? If we know that's the end.
Monies have been appropriated to get into the next step,
When,
which
I think
is,
the frustration is these people want to know
Okay.
when the boots are gonna be on the ground to clean
so
this
we have
mess.
a comment period that starts tomorrow. We solicit comments, we fold that into a permit that basically moves forward the next step, which is envisioning, addressing the material that we know is beyond the landfill perimeter.
And one more thing, it was really upsetting to listen to you downplay
That was not my
these
intention.
chemicals, you know what I mean? That it's
No,
not
no, no.
important, it's not hazardous because they're not
No,
drinking.
no, no, no.
But my godchild's on that property, and so is a lot of my family. There's a lot of crap on it. We know back in the 70s that everybody and their brother was dumping their stuff on the big pig in that dump. Especially when they knew they were closing it down, all the illegal stuff, people were paying people off. Everybody knows, it's no big secret. You know what I mean? Fix the mess, that's all these people want, fix it. Thank you.
Noted, and I just want to say, I don't want to misrepresent or downplay or discount. I just said it to the gentleman here.
From what I'm seeing, and I'm not a
No,
scientist,
what I'm
but
trying
that's
to
what it sounds
explain,
like.
and before we gotta go to the virtual hand, what I'm
I'm
trying
looking
to
at
explain
critical
is
levels,
that the
critical
municipal,
levels in your report.
the municipal water supply is well watched. That was my only comment, and if I took too long, I apologize. I
Well,
just wanted to
Millie, if you,
underscore
if
that.
you really were looking at the water, sometimes I take a shower and the water that comes out of my spigot is browner than my skin. So when you talk about drinking water, that concerns me. Everyone knows about brown water.
So Craig, can we stick to the rules?
Well, I'm just sorry.
I know we have other
I
people.
just-
Okay,
and
we can
we'll
come back to
get
that.
back to you,
We can
but
come back to that, you know.
we have
Okay.
Wendy
Okay.
on.
Anyone else in the room?
One of our
I see-
attorneys would like to
I-
speak.
Excuse me, I apologize, Reverend. If the gentleman here who has not said a thing tonight, kindly please say something.
My question's very quick. I read the report and it mentioned the 1971 and I think the 1977 regulations. Are the regulations under which you're testing and monitoring and visioning the cleanup, are they modern regulations? So current day? Okay, so is there any relevance to the 70s regulations in this process?
Only to the fact that the landfill at that time followed those regulations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, why don't we, okay, here you go.
Did you mind if time? No questions?
Yeah, of course, go ahead.
Yeah, far away.
Andrew Kaplan, I'm a resident of Situate, and I live in Stockbridge, Landfill development. So I'm a retired physician. I diagnosed cancer for most of my practicing career. I'm just wondering if there's any population health studies on the community or cancer clusters in the region, or if there any that is known, because I pulled the assessment of the Stockbridge Landing site for the evaluation, and there were elevated levels of, I can't remember, it was cadmium, barium, what it seemed minor, but again,
I appreciate that
it's a lofty,
question.
it's a lofty thing to say there's no risk.
Yeah, no, Doctor, what I meant to say was, in the paradigm of public health, as you know, no exposure equals no risk. That was a very generic term. It's not applicable. Maybe it's not, maybe or may not be applicable, which is why we always focus on those exposure points, those exposure pathways. To more specifically answer your question, I would need to get back to you. I want your number, because the Department of Public Health is the agency in the Commonwealth that actually gets into digging into the cancer registry data. We don't, they do. They're the experts, they're the toxicologists and the physicians that actually, and there is a program. It basically looks back every single time, perhaps you may have had unfortunate news to get to someone about a cancer outcome. That information goes to a registry, and that information then is evaluated and data layers are prepared. And they are available actually to denote if there are certain types of cancers within the community. So my best shot here is to talk to you after this meeting, and I can certainly put you in touch with the Department of Public Health, and thank you for your question. So we're gonna go to the virtual, so that we don't lose the person.
Yep.
And thank you for, thanks for flagging it, Seth.
Yep,
Appreciate
you
that.
bet.
You got it. Wendy, you should be okay to unmute yourself. Go right ahead. Just your name, address, and go ahead with your comment, Wendy.
Thank you. My name is Wendy Morrill. I'm actually from New Bedford, but I'm tuning into this specifically because I'm concerned about this issue, because here in New Bedford, we have concerns about an existing landfill that will be closed and capped within the next 5 to 10 years, as well as a proposed trash transfer station. And it's proposed for a property that is bordering on the Dartmouth, East Freetown and New Bedford property boundaries. So this would impact 3 communities and all of the citizens would be at risk in this area. So I'm tuning in for that specific reason, but I have some concerns and questions that I'd like to share as a result of what I've heard tonight. I'm concerned about a statement that was made earlier regarding that comments will be considered and responded to regardless of whether or not they're from an EJ community. The statement was made that we want to hear from everybody, so they'll all be treated the same. But the problem is that the siting of facilities like this was not treated the same. They've always been targeted for historically marginalized and oppressed communities. So, those communities need a little bit more preference in the process of remediating the problems that have been created by these facilities. And then I wanted to add to what Reverend Dias said. I didn't hear him ask if there had been testing for PFAS, along with the laundry list of tests that he had asked about. And then also wanted to just add, to answer a question that was mentioned earlier, was that the state soil testing standards were updated in 2019. So I don't know when there was the last soil test done on this property, but that's when the standards for the state testing was updated, was 2019. And then just wanted to make one more statement. Pollution and wildlife do not know or abide by boundaries, and neither does air, water, or soil pollution. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wendy, thank you very much. We appreciate your comments, and we are considering all those in discussions, because as you know, the science changes, and we know more now than we did before. And just to confirm that, in fact, the mass contingency plan, soil standards, as well as the groundwater standards, they were updated in 2019, given new science and new knowledge. So thank you very much, Wendy, and we are cognizant of your concerns as it pertains to those 2 identified locations in the city of New Bedford. We appreciate the time and your patience, truly.
So Millie, we get 7:52 and we got to secure at 8. So any other questions here in the room? Any out on
And then we
remote?
want to go back to.
Yeah.
One quick question. The 2019.
Can you just identify yourself, sir, as well?
I'm Bob Clear. I've been through this whole process from the beginning, pretty much, and a supporter of the concerned citizens. I also do business in town. And my question is this one just brought up the 2019 standard versus, and I know this has been talked before, but I don't know that I got the full answer. The 1971 standard. So the testing you're doing now,
It meets the current requirements. Yes, Mr.
I'm just a little more
Coogan.
concerned, the more I'm hearing, even 3 years in, I'm even more concerned today.
Yeah.
3 years ago.
Absolutely. So the standard is to ensure that the science and toxicology and any risk-based numbers are current to the science that we know today. Okay, I see 2 hands.
Well, I do have a simple question, and it's for the town. I don't know who, you guys are selecting of the town. Well, I don't know who I'm talking to. Well, whoever the town is, can you raise your hand so I can at least know, okay, I heard of Burke here, right? Before.
Yeah, I'm on the select board, Jim's our town
Okay.
administrator.
My question is simple, some recipients of federal money, I would think that's what you guys are. We've asked for activity benefits and increased testing as residents. My brother's director butter of it. We're asking that you go the extra mile and do your due diligence. We can't trust the DEP and got a history of abuse through the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Well, and I won't articulate it today, but it's well documented. So we're asking the town, the sub-recipients of federal money, we want activities, benefits, site reviews, testing for hazardous waste, all throughout the boundaries and all that. And also for the town, can you tell me in Situate, is there any environmental justice community that was designated by the state? And do you have an environmental justice community designated by the state in Situate?
I'm not aware of it, no.
I just want to only comment, your perspective is your perspective. I signed up to become an environmental regulator in 1998. Prior to that, I worked tirelessly to ensure that my legacy on this planet was noted. This team works really hard for 84 cities and towns, managing over 100 programs. And I just want to tell you that we take a lot of pride in the work we do. I signed up, and my mission is protection of human health and the environment. I just want to make that note.
I would like to thank everyone for getting us to this point. And if trust is an issue, we need to go back to the opening goal of open communication and really understanding we are at a point where we are about perspective learning. We are understanding each of our roles in this process to get to a solution. And how often have you heard Representative Kearney say to you, the people, you're doing your due diligence. And now you've got the experts here who have been also serving their role. And I would not want us to break down the process because all of a sudden we're going steps backward and saying there's no trust. So let's keep moving forward. Everyone tonight has been expressing passion, expertise, and practical data. And I want Melly to be able to bring the meeting to a close.
I'd like to say one more thing though, and I appreciate what you said. And I think the first step with the trust is the site visit. Be transparent. Let's do the site visit. Let's the people that have been affected by this. And so we can see where the boundaries are. Do we know where the boundaries are? Because I can't find them.
They're on a surveyed plan, yes, we know where the boundaries are.
So there's
Surveyor says that he didn't do it. When I spoke to the surveyor.
We've taken it as a comment, we'll work on it.
I'm just saying, that's why I want to know the boundaries.
Absolutely.
Can't give you the answer right this minute, but
She's
we're
right.
hearing you.
If we're gonna be open, let's have these.
So Craig, what's happened is part of our public comment process is to articulate the comment. Tonight is not about answering or responding. Yeah. So I just don't want us to be reiterating that. We just need to bring it to a close.
I appreciate it very much. And I really want to end with Ms. Ball.
I just want to just say, I have one question for Karen, you and Jim again. And I also want to just say that, like, I appreciate that, Katie, because I think it's so important on anything that we do in this town that we work together. And we all have to take into consideration the history, but we don't all know everything, and we learn as we go. And I learned from so many people, and it was interesting, Mr. Parker, hearing your comments. I think my dad is actually a teacher, my dad's Dave Ball, so I definitely took those classes with him and probably Frank Mumford or one of his colleagues. But as far as we go, like down the road, so we go to the next town meeting and we're gonna vote for more money. Has there been any consideration or any talk yet about looking for federal funding for when we go to the next phase? Because, that's gonna be the big question. I can see people probably are gonna start to ask that question. But I don't even know, like, if this money's available, but are we starting to think, okay, like, based on what the consultants have identified in some of the reports, do we need to start thinking about federal funding grants, that sort of thing? And I know that's
So the
down the road
question
in
is
the
directed to
future.
town. What I can definitely tell you is that we need to understand what it is we need to do, so to understand how much it's gonna cost.
Right.
And it all departs from addressing all of the questions that have been raised today, so we can have a concrete plan of action. And that's what we are looking for, a concrete plan of action. The first question that the federal government would ask would be, what exactly is the problem that we're trying to solve, right? So we need your patience to at least get us through this comment period, and so that we, the town, can actually come out with a plan that encompasses the job at hand, the primary thing. And often, I just want to remind people before we close the meeting, so that's kind of like in a nutshell my answer. Often there are immediate response actions that get at the very apparent thing. And from my estimation tonight, what we're looking at is the waste needs to be addressed. The waste that has moved over yonder, the perimeter border, that's the very first thing. It may not mean that it's the only thing, but we need to start somewhere. And that's what we're imploring everybody today to give us a sense of your questions. So at least that immediate response action, I'm calling it arbitrary because there is a process for solid waste, the solid waste program. We really need to get started on that. So
Can I close?
let's not close the door on your question, Ms. Paul.
This is not personal, because I really enjoy you. I have known you for many years in everything I have seen everything. This is not personal.
No, but
It's professional. And even though you deal with civil rights aspect, and I guess you're an LSP by.
I'm not an LSP.
Excuse me. What we're concerned about is very simple. We don't feel safe. There's inadequate testing throughout all the whole site as we articulated it. And we don't believe for the human services, public safety, for humans and for, that's what we're saying. It's a cry for help. We're asking not to bound around these little few places. We want you to do the holistic aspect. I know the DEP is not the owners. The town is now. The shift is going on the town. So they heard our cries. We're asking that sub-recipients use all the benefits, all the money they can do, go sweep all through that whole aspect of all to make sure that it is safe and our children don't have to die or certain, that's all we're asking. So that's why we presented out today to the town. The town owns the thing. They're responsible for now. You know what I mean? They're the ones that's gonna have to hold the bag. So we're just pleading as, don't that expression like Rodney King, can't we all get along? That's not it. We get along, that's why we're here. We're here because we're making a cry of plea. We're concerned about the safety. We don't think it's adequate at this point in time for the public health and public safety, and not just on these little things. That's all we're saying, and we're trying to say it in the most articulate way, where it's harmonious and acceptable. That's all we're saying.
This concludes our evening. Thank you very much, everybody who took the time. I know it's a gorgeous night, and we sacrificed a little bit of mental health night, shall we say. But here we are, and I thank you very much for your support, and we will continue to work together as a team.